any such view, well, to the extent that you are still emphasizing the sense objects, one way or the other, sight, sound, smell, taste, touches, that you emphasize them in terms of you think, at least to some extent, suffering comes from them, is caused by them, to that extent you lack yoniso manasikara. So then if your whole view revolves around pure management, cover-up, denial of sense objects, because obviously they bother you seemingly, you don't know the escape from them, so you'll just try to deny the reality of them through these kind of, as I said, retroactive reinterpretations. And it's like, oh, see, that time when I suffered because somebody said something, well, it was just sound entering my ear, thus suffering was not real. So you relieve yourself from the burden of carrying it because you don't know the escape from it. And you don't really relieve yourself, you just cover it up until it comes back, until the new sounds touch your ear. And then you try so hard that when somebody's saying something upsetting to you, to interpret that as sounds touching your ear, but your feelings, they don't work that way. So you're going to still be upset. Even if the next millisecond you manage to plug it, the dukkha still comes first. And the whole thing, the only reason you need to do all of that is because deep down you know that you cannot not be touched by dukkha in the first place. You can only try and manage it and sort of contain it. But the idea of, no, this thing that bothers me, can I reach the place where I'm not bothered to begin with, even if I don't do anything, even if I don't make any effort to look at it this way or that way, or focus like this and concentrate on that. And then you realize, oh, that's where the Dhamma begins. The complete uprooting. And in order to, like somebody who has been, everybody would have been managing the suffering to some extent. If you want to start practicing the practice of uprooting, first thing you need to give up is management of suffering.
Yeah. Or seeing at least you're dependent on that management.
Yeah. And then work your way towards being able to basically give it up, because for as long as you don't give it up, you're not starting the practice.
Bound, you're enslaved by it.
Yeah. Yeah, the practice is just kept at the arm's length. Because each time you give into management,
you're fueling it.
You fuel the implicit, the tacit assumption that suffering did come from that thing that I'm managing, not from my attitude towards it. So that's why yoniso manasikara is not just like one of the random things that anybody can just do. Because people might develop that notion. Yoniso manasikara is one of the factors for the right view. Okay, so how do I do yoniso? And then I find the right instruction, and then I get the right view. Well, you do yoniso by giving up the management even before.
Yeah, so you see a snake, and there's like this
fear.
So it's like the first thing is to like not try and get rid of that fear, just acknowledge.
Well, yeah,
that.
like what we were speaking yesterday, like the common notion is you see a snake, there is fear, then you either try to find more information about snake so to not be afraid, or deny it was a snake to begin with. Oh, look, it was actually just a rope. And then the fear disappears and you think you're free now. But if you have even like a slight degree of transparency and honesty, yes, the fear might have subsided now because you learned that snake is not venomous, or you came closer and you saw that snake was a rope, actually. But then you realize, yeah, okay, but does that mean that I will never in the future experience anything else that will make me afraid first, even if I can manage it afterwards? And you realize that is already a problem. Because what if you come closer and it's actually even worse snake than you thought it was, and it's not a rope? Then you will be twice as affected with your fear that already affected you.
Or just anything that can evoke fear.
Exactly.
The fact that there is fear.
Exactly. So the fact that you're liable to it, even if you could prove it wrong afterwards, doesn't make it less real when it affects you. So the Dhamma is not there to disprove reality of things as a way of pasting this view on everything that bothers you. The Dhamma is there to teach you how not to be bothered in the first place. And then you don't care if it's a real snake or a rope or a venomous or non-venomous one, you won't be affected by fear either way. And that's the true freedom. Not just knowing how to cover it up. So that's like if somebody were to start sense restraint, keeping the precepts rightly, not paired with the view of, oh, if I just do these things mechanically, I'll become a Sotapanna. But more like, as we discussed for the last few days here, when you say no to your desires, when the precepts restrain you, the mind complains, you don't cover it up. You don't give in, you don't psychologize, and you certainly don't try to get rid of it.
But you already will be covering up. It's more like seeing that you're covering up.
Yeah.
Like,
so basically, when I say you're not covering it up, your starting point is covering it up.
Yeah, exactly.
But now you know that you're not supposed to cover it up, so you begin to cover it up less and less and less until it's completely uncovered. But what I'm saying is that even at that stage, doing that is closer to Yoniso Manasikara, it's closer to that right way of attending things for what they are, where they are, than doing the Yoniso Manasikara on account of you learn what Yoniso Manasikara is and now you're trying to attend things in this different, indirect way, peripherally, and so on. So through not allowing yourself a cover-up, you are doing the practice. You're doing the Yoniso Manasikara, which means it cannot be done the way you conceive doing to be. And that's why the more you do it, the more effortless it becomes. Because actually there was never effort required. Effort was required in covering it up. Then effort might be required in abstaining from covering it up until it's sufficiently uncovered. Because you realize, like, sensuality, following desire, factually takes effort and takes time. Restraining from it is immediately visible and takes no effort and takes no time. Saying no to desire that you didn't follow, that's it. It ended there. You're restrained. So you don't have to keep doing it or start engaging in the actions in order to do it. You just need to abstain from going down the effort of sensuality that would take time and immediately stay with what was already there.
Like right now, there's already sight, sound, smells, taste, touches, thoughts that don't involve craving. It's not like that. I need to try and...
No.
Yeah.
But what person needs to do is start to see them correctly. In other words, recognize sense objects, sight, sound, smell, taste, touches that are not affected with craving, existing on their own within the domains of the senses. And then recognize those that are rooted in craving and they're not given to those. But you don't have to deny every sight. Because if that were the case, then the Buddha would have agreed with that man who said, how do you practice, taming of your eye? He says, by not seeing forms with my eyes. And he says, well, that's like a blind man. So it's not all of the sights that are the problem. If you think all of the sights are the problem, means you don't see the difference between sights affected with craving and sights not affected with craving, which means you don't see the middle way. And for as long as that's not discerned, there is no practice for that person.
It's the same even with virtue in terms of what you were saying about it's taking no effort and taking no time.
Yeah.
That you can see that same principle on the level of, like, it's only like an act. You only need to think of it as an active practice that you need to do for as long as your mode of existence, I suppose, is still dependent on very specific actions that most of the time, even most people are not doing.
Yeah.
You realize, okay, I just need to kind of stay on this level that's already kind of there.
Without any fuel required.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole point.
But isn't it the case that this recognition of those pressures are more gradual? So you're unable to right now, right here, just release all the possible pressures, but it's like one step ahead. So there's some bunch of pressures, so to speak, and they begin to cease, so to speak, ceasing.
No, definitely. Yeah.
Gradually.
The whole thing is gradual. You cannot do it just all instantly or all together.
Yeah.
That's why it has to start with physical restraint and restraining your senses. So even if you don't see any of this, that's why it has to, because you don't see any of this, that's the starting point. A person needs to say no to unsuitable sights, sounds, smell, taste, touches, even if they don't see the reason why. They don't see a direct connection between saying no to those things and practicing the Dhamma. They have to at least start saying no first in order to see the connection with the practice of the Dhamma. And that connection would gradually, become revealed, be revealed.
Like anchored the mind properly.
Sorry?
Anchored the mind properly.
Well, that would be the result of it. It wouldn't be your doing.
Mm-hmm.
You would anchor the mind by not basically exposing it to the waves. Then it would settle. But you can't just put the anchor down and now it's anchored, while you're still fully allowing it to go among the high waves.
Also, not forgetting that this anchor, you, so to speak, your mind is already developed to some degree, but sometimes you can, forget or too much go into the senses domain. Is it possible to achieve some mind development? But
forgetting about it, it's not a problem in itself. But acting against it, through giving in the acts of desire, ill will, distraction, that's what makes it a problem. And those things you don't do accidentally. They cannot just happen or you just forgot and you slipped into them. They're always on the level of your choice. And it's important to distinguish this, because if people don't see that that's where the threshold is, then they'll be afraid of naturally just mind forgetting stuff. And that's impossible to stop. Things come and go. You can't possibly know everything all the time. Even the Buddha said that. Nobody, even the Supreme Tathagata, is not omniscient, that he knows everything at every second all the time. That's not how things work. And that's not the problem. But if people don't know that the problem is choices of greed, aversion, delusion, and they have not discerned them sufficiently enough, then they'll fear everything and nothing. So then when they forget about anchoring of the mind or the greater context, they break the precepts, because there's nothing in between that they learn how to see. But even then, even when you're the utmost forgetful one, when it comes to breaking the precepts or doing unwholesome things, that still has to be a conscious choice. So if you still go against the precepts and you still break that, go through that choice to break it, means you haven't really understood the weight of that action. You haven't understood the danger of doing so for yourself. So that's why one breaks precepts, not because they're forgetful. Because if something becomes very important to you, doesn't matter if it's a millisecond or 2 hours, the importance of it remains and you can't forget it. As I was giving that simile with drinking a beautiful beverage that then you find out there is poison in it. I mean, the beverage is so good you're addicted to it, let's put it that way. You've been drinking it your whole life. And now somebody says there is a poison in it, and you kind of can see for yourself that there probably is a poison in it. The only time you would drink the beverage is if you completely forget that there is a poison in it, which means you haven't really understood the danger of the poison. Or sometimes you might not know how harmful the poison is, because you haven't investigated enough. And you know there is a poison, but you think you'll be fine, every now and then. And that's why you would choose to drink it again. But if on the other hand, you realized to the extent necessary the danger of the poison, Doesn't matter if somebody wakes you up in the middle of the night. If you don't remember anything else, drink means poison, poison means death. And you wouldn't need to go through the motions to remind yourself how not to choose to drink it. You just need to basically see that danger that you would have developed by then, and you wouldn't be drinking it. The simile the Buddha gave is like the man, the leper, who was used to burning his skin with coal and embers because he was offering him a relief, but then he finds another medicine, his skin is cured, no more leprosy. Would he still burn himself with those painful coals? No. It says even if two strong men were to take him under his arm and drag him into the pit of embers, he would want to be anywhere else except there. He wouldn't be able to accidentally choose the embers again because they're factually unpleasant.
Any other perception other than the perception?
Other than the perception of the addicted poison that you've been drinking. But as I said, you can't mechanically just think these impersonal abstract thoughts and then magically the choice of choosing the drink disappears. Because that's not where the choice was coming from. The choice was coming from not recognizing fully that it will kill you if you drink it. As simple as that. So then the practice is to contemplate the danger that it is implicit until it really sinks in that it will kill you if you drink it. Then you can't forget it. Even if you forget everything else, you cannot possibly intentionally engage with it ever again.
For example, a little bit in different direction, let's say that one already see the senses, but sometimes they pressure more, and sometimes they like a more calm. And there is this like knowledge that this pressure from the senses, it's more intense. And this is the time when one breaking the precept, so to speak, because this more intense pressure from.
No, see, the pressure can be as intense as it wants. It cannot make you act on its own. Only your choice to act makes you act. That's always on you. So you can have the pressure building up, but you are the one who then chooses, I can't take this anymore, let me do this what I'm pressured towards. In other words, the compulsion to drink this poisonous beverage is so much, I don't care about the poison. But it always has to be your choice. It cannot be just pressure automatically comes and then the action automatically follows. Pressure goes in one direction, action goes in another direction. You are the binding agent. You are the one who does not want the pressure, and that's why chooses to go the pathway of following the pleasure, to cover it up, to replace it with.
The intensity of this pressure is from the point of view 3 years ago, and now is of course much less.
Of course, because you've been practicing restraint and keeping the precept, so you are not fueling. But if you want to uproot it once and for all, you have to recognize, because by the way, the pressure is now de-intensified because you haven't been living in the world like before. So the circumstances have diminished your exposure to the pressuring things. But if you were to say be forced to return and work and live like before, would your mind still remain unbothered? Would temptations not exist for it?
That life is already diminished, so to speak.
Well, it is diminished, but it's diminished because of the circumstances. Like the fact that, see, you might disagree, but the fact is you are still doubtful about it, which means you don't know for sure. You like to think it's diminished, and there is no problem in thinking it's diminished, but the problem is to think that it's diminished because of something that it's not there. It can only diminish when the danger becomes fully apparent, and then It doesn't matter the circumstances. Of course, you would still prefer to live a quiet life. But if that changes, war comes, you get put in a prison or whatever, the value of not drinking the poison cannot diminish. And for that value to be fully developed, you need to recognize that no amount of pressure makes you act. You make yourself act because you don't want the pressure, because you want to resist it, because you want it to go sooner. That's why often those similes in the suttas of Arahant being like the immovable mountain. It's not that Arahant doesn't experience the mountain doesn't experience the wind, the rain, the snow, the elements. It does, but it's immovable. That cannot make it act. And that's the Arahant. No amount of stuff can make him do things out of greed, aversion, delusion. Impossible. The connection has been severed. The association has been destroyed. So when Arahant is experiencing pressures of elements or harassment, there is no even an option for his mind to like, oh, let me go back to this desire to give in, to relieve myself, because he fully understood that there is no relief in the way he used to think it was, like burning embers. They don't factually offer relief from leprosy. They just numb you down because they burn you.
Which doesn't mean, so like the fact that he cannot choose those actions. It means exactly the opposite of it meaning like his choices are not free anymore or something. It's completely the opposite. It's like his choice, when you said that it's like completely severed from those pressures, that's what makes it utterly free.
Yeah.
Because there is no reason, like it's impossible for somebody to willingly, freely choose to just burn themselves with that ember. It can only be done.
Well, I kind of associating it with the notion of relief from what bothers them.
Done.
But if there is no original bother from which you would be seeking the relief, there is no association for acting, for doing anything towards it. So if the pressure, doesn't matter the intensity, cannot bother you, why would you be breaking the precepts? Why would you be giving in to anything on account of it? You only do so because it still bothers you. And it will bother you. It's not like that's going to stop overnight. But the reason why I'm saying is this is so that you know then, okay, so it's not that pressure automatically results in action. It's more like I have a critical point after which I can't withstand the pressure, and then I choose to go this way or that way, which means that point needs to be upgraded. That point needs to be developed further. Whereby, as the suttas say, even if highway robbers catch you and chop your limbs off and abuse you, not just you wouldn't do anything by body or speech out of that pressure, even mentally, the sutta says, Arahant will not have thoughts of hatred towards them. Because that was already a coping mechanism, hateful thoughts. But there is nothing to cope. Why would you be coping when nothing is bothering you to begin with?
So in practical way, less and less acting out of pressure is better direction than acting out of pressure in direction of constant increasing, so to speak. So it's like removing yourself from the domain of acting out of pressure by not giving in, instead of even those small acts of acting out of pressure it's like still there is some burning of this fire, even little, but still it burns.
Yes. In that theoretical sense, that's correct. It's just that what constitutes acting out of pressure is not a static thing that you can just adhere to it as a method. What constitutes what's acting out of pressure at the time is your intention to act at a time. So that's what needs to be refined more and more. So first, you obviously don't act out in the obvious, coarse, visibly unwholesome ways. And when that basis is covered, you follow the same principle. And then you see whether your thing that you're about to do, even if it's not against the precepts, you see, well, where is this rooted at? Am I doing it because of one of the hindrances? Because of this, because of that? I want to get rid of the discomfort of it? In which case you already recognize, okay, so that would be rooted in pressure. So then when you say no to it, your job begins. Because often people think, okay, so I just need to keep saying no to the acting out of pressure and then Sotapatti will happen. No, learning how to say no to the pressure on the right level is where your practice starts. Because when you say no to acting out of pressure, even if it's not against the precepts, for example, well, your mind will let you know about it. If not right away, it's going to start going in that direction. So it's going to start throwing more rational thoughts at you, more irrational thoughts at you, irrational scenarios, trying to scare you more, trying to pressure you more, just because you said no to those little things. And then what do? Do you then explain that mind away? Do you focus on your nostrils so you don't have to think about it? Do you try to distract yourself with garden work so that you don't think about what's pressuring you? Or do you allow it to be there because that's what it is? That's who it is. That's what the mind is. And then learn to live with that type of mind, let's put it that way. Not the mind on your own terms. Because see, by learning to live with it, you're learning to not be moved by any intensity of any scenario, of any mind state. And that's why technically, as the Buddha was saying, this can be developed even if somebody's outside of his teaching. Obviously, they would be very wise and astute as to where the point is. But it's not limited, this mind development. Of course, we know it now because of the Buddha's teachings. But generally, you could see if somebody, for whatever reason, starts valuing not acting out of pressure, starts refining the same principle, but then not covering up the mind that's the result of that imposed pressure and saying no to your desires, they would force themselves to grow and become immovable. And sometimes that mind might be in that state for days, weeks, state of doubt, state of discomfort, just mind. Everything else is fine, but at the back of the mind, like if something bothers you, and you have to wait 2 weeks before you can resolve it. And something's really bothering you. It's an important thing. But for 2 weeks, you have to be patient with it. So what your common person would do, they would just try to make those 2 weeks go as quickly as possible. Engage in sensuality, engage in distraction, don't think about it until the second week comes when you can deal with it. But now imagine you have no access to sensuality or distractions. You just have to stay with something that will bother you for, 14 days. And not deny that mind. Don't spend your whole day sleeping so you don't think about it, but go about your life with this being the weather, the mood, always there. That's the training of separating yourself correctly, of disassociating yourself from that mind correctly. Now imagine if instead of 2 weeks you are ready for 2 years, 20 years, forever. That's it. You will be free from your own mind. If you are ready to be with it forever without any traces of resistance towards it, or trying to replace it, or deal with it, or distract yourself from it, there is nothing left for you to do. But start with 2 weeks. Because you don't need to do anything about it. When that state's present, it's not like, oh, now I have to do this, and you don't have to do anything. You just have to say no to doing things that will be taking you away from it. That's how you stay with it.
Taking you away from it means becoming absorbed in its content.
Whatever, distracting yourself from it, yeah. Psychologizing it, focusing away moment to moment so you don't think about it, so it disappears.
And then, but it also doesn't necessarily mean, okay, I must keep it there.
No.
Because
no.
that
becomes your doing again.
Exactly, it's on your own terms.
So say you think I must keep it there, well, you ask yourself, why? Why do I have to keep it there? If I don't keep it, will it go away? No. If I keep it, will it go faster? Oh, well, that's kind of what I'm hoping. That if I keep it there, it will disappear and stop bothering me because I'm resisting it. So not pushing forward, not standing still, as the sutta says. And not pulling backwards, as I say.
So basically disown it, that mind, by not acting out.
Disowning would be the result of setting it up correctly and then enduring it correctly. But if I say yes, disown it, it's something that you would probably start to do. Start applying the idea of disowning it. But that's not disowning it. Disowning means not feed it, don't let it disappear either, i.e. don't distract yourself from it. That will result in disowning. Why? Because it will become apparent that you can't own it even if you want to.